Remedy Entertainment's 2019 release, Control, is finally getting a sequel. For many, we have been looking forward to this for 6 years. For others, you may be asking, what is Control? Regardless of which camp you're in, I've got you. This video will act as a crash course for everything you need to know about the setting before Control Resonant. For starters, I would recommend playing through the franchise yourself. However, if you don't have the time, resources, or simply are looking for a refresher, this video is for you. Be advised that this will not cover everything. After all, a full breakdown of Control's lore would make this a 12-hour video alone, not even counting the other games in the franchise. So I will condense this down to all the major points. If you want a complete summary, just let me know in the comments below. So let's get going into the Newcomers Guide to Control lore. What better place to begin than the game's namesake? The Federal Bureau of Control, or FBC for short, is a clandestine government agency tasked with responding to paranatural threats to our perceived reality. The motto, as shown in their seal, is Invenio Investigatio Imperium, find, research, and control. For those familiar with the SCP Foundation, yeah, that's basically it. The FBC's headquarters is located at 34 Thomas Street in New York. The skyscraper itself is a place of power, a paranormal construct known as the Oldest House. It is a building that is bigger on the inside than on the outside, infinitely growing based upon the needs of those who occupy it. The Oldest House also has a property where only those specifically looking for it are able to find it. As a result, citizens walking past it on the street are unable to see it, a place of power that doesn't like attention and conceals itself in plain sight, just like the agency who resides inside. Inside, the place is broken up into several sectors. Executive is home to the director and management staff. Maintenance repairs the building, keeps the lights on, and deals with the cleanup of anything that doesn't belong. Research is home to the scientists who spend their days trying to rationalize and quantify the paranatural world. The Panopticon houses dangerous artifacts and prisoners who would pose a threat to the world if allowed to run wild. And Investigations is the internal affairs and law enforcement wing of the FBC. However, there is more than this. Another feature of the Oldest House is that it acts as a nexus point that branches out into all other realities, much like another great tree, Yggdrasil. If each branch on that tree is another world, then the Oldest House is the trunk. As such, it has no home dimension. Our world, after all, is just another branch on that great tree. If we take this analogy further, the roots of the tree travel down into the foundations, where Paleolithic cave drawings depict the worship of unknown beings. Standing in the heart of it all is a giant black monolith structure known only as the Nail. It is there that contact with an alien intelligence known as the Board was made. We will come back to this later. On August 4th, 1964, FBC staff accidentally came across the bowels of the house while investigating a different occurrence. Initially, only the foundation was stable. The upper floors acted as an amorphous and ever-changing interior. Individuals who traveled up there would go missing and never be recovered. Eventually, with the help of a scientist named Dr. Theodore Ash Jr., the place became stabilized and the FBC moved their operations into the house proper. Even though we have in-game records showing the FBC existed at least as far back as the turn of the 20th century, the 1960s is where it evolved into the modern form we know now. That's enough of a primer. We have many other topics to cover. As mentioned in Part 1, the FBC investigates paranatural intrusions upon our reality. Largely, these take 3 different forms. While there is some overlap between them, let's tackle them one at a time. Altered items are mundane objects which are holders of paranatural forces. Some within the FBC believe they are conscious. In some cases, they have been shown to require some form of worship to remain passive, whether that form simply be attention or ritual sacrifice. Others are more volatile and need to be contained within a black rock cell. Black rock is a mineral from another dimension that creates a facsimile of a Faraday cage, cutting off the altered item's ability to act up. This is not a universal solution, however. Black rock only disrupts wavelengths between a certain frequency range. Some altered items resonate at a frequency that is blocked by the mineral, some are dampened, and others are unaffected. One example of an altered item is the Victorian mirror. It creates a mirror dimension that reflects back an inverted version of the world with minor variations. This only works for a certain radius around the mirror itself. If the mirror is moved while someone is inside, they become trapped forever. Objects of power are similar but act in a different manner. While they also have unique effects on their own, they are capable of being bound to a para-utilitarian, allowing that individual to borrow the innate power to use at will. The strength of this power is determined by the individual. For example, the floppy disk allows the user to perform feats of telekinesis. Some para-utilitarians in the research sector bound the OOP and could throw pencils and cups a few feet away. However, people like Director Faden have been shown to launch chunks of granite over 50 yards with lethal force. This ability to bind objects is claimed to be facilitated by the board. Their binding ritual is performed by traveling into a reality called the astral plane and passing their trials. Out of the OOPs, the most important ones are the service weapon and the hotline. The former is a weapon that can only be wielded by the board-appointed director. Its form changes based upon what the wielder perceives as a weapon in their cognition. As a result, it is said that legendary weapons such as Excalibur, Mjolnir, and Veronostra are just incarnations of this service weapon. The hotline is a telephone that can tap into the network of other dimensions, allowing communication with the board, those residing in other realities, or even with the dead. Thresholds is a term used to describe these other dimensions. Given certain conditions, the oldest house can resonate at a specific frequency that opens doorways to these thresholds. Examples are the Blackrock Quarry, where the mineral is mined, the Mold Threshold, the Dark Place, the Mirror Threshold, and the Ocean View Motel, to name a few. We will talk about some of these more in detail later. These thresholds can form out in the wider world as well. Usually this is as a result to other places of power like Cauldron Lake, the influence of altered items like the antenna loop radio, or objects of power such as the slide projector. Altered World Events, or AWEs, is a catch-all term for any occurrence of these paranatural forces acting up. They can be instances of a new altered item causing havoc out in the world, such as the human handchair that causes gravitational anomalies at the full moon, or a threshold opening up like the stable opening to the Dark Place at Cauldron Lake in Bright Falls. FBC Ranger staff are trained in AWE responses and threshold exploration. Central to FBC and Objects of Power is the board. This is a choir of extra-dimensional entities that appears to be bound inside the oldest house. Upon first finding their way inside, the acting director at the time, Broderick Northmore, was the first to come into contact with them. Prior to this, all directors were appointed by Washington, D.C. From now moving forward, the board decides on the director. These entities gifted him with the service weapon to act as a symbol of his authority, and the hotline to communicate with them freely. However, they have been shown to be controlling and do not permit dissent. The subsequent director Zachariah Trench listened to their input but did not truly trust them. Then the following director Jesse Faden was threatened on multiple occasions on what would happen if she disobeyed. Once, they instructed her to remove all staff from the Foundation so they could not investigate the nail. Failing to do so would result in negative consequences. On another occasion, a related entity known as Former began to communicate with her. They informed Director Faden that if she believes the Former's lies, they will ensure she ceases to exist in this reality at all. Former was at one point a member of the board, but there was a disagreement and it was banished. Ever since, it has wandered about, occupying altered items such as the Arctic Queen refrigerator or the Pink Flamingo. Down in the Foundation, it aided Jessie in her fight with the Hiss and the Broken Nail. After these events, we see that Former was able to slip out of the astral plane and into the Foundation itself. Its motives are unknown to us at this time. At the end of the day, this group of entities appears to concern themselves with their own goals and uses the FBC as a tool to achieve them. When obeyed, they give power. When confronted, they become angry. While they do claim that only through them objects of power can be bound, we see several times this is not the case. Outside of the oldest house, some objects of power were used by others, and the board was not involved. There may be a universal method to accomplish this that the board is aware of but chooses to keep it a secret. In that way, they are perceived as the giver of power, rather than simply a middleman. Earlier in this section, I mentioned the nail. Down in the Foundation is a megalithic black stone that appears to have been pierced deep into the earth. As the name suggests, it acts as a tether or anchor that binds two dimensions together. In this case is the physical link between the foundation of the oldest house and the astral plane. Through this connection, the board is able to remain bound to the house, and by extension, this reality as a whole. The role of FBC Director comes with a responsibility that far exceeds other government heads. It includes not only managing the operations of the Bureau, but also the very lives of the employees and the fate of the world as a whole. After the discovery of the oldest house, the board became involved. Great power was also gifted to those who occupy the big chair. This responsibility was taken in different ways by different individuals. Let's take a look at all those we know about. Director Theodore Ashe is not to be confused with his son, Dr. Theodore Ashe Jr., who was the head of research during this and the following administration. Not much is known about this director since he passed away shortly before the oldest house was discovered. He spent his career searching for proof of the unknown and died right before it was found. His son saw it as the greatest of ironies. After his death, a bureaucrat from Washington, D.C. was appointed to run the Bureau. Here enters Director Broderick Northmore. Shortly after he assumed the role, the oldest house was discovered. Staff first entered in through the foundation and discovered the nail. At first, there was nothing else down here. However, the following day, an altar appeared before it with the service weapon laid out. Northmore became the first director to be appointed by the board directly and was gifted the service weapon as a symbol of his authority. From that point forward, this ritual fed into his pre-existing ego. He claimed that all prior directors were frauds. Anyone appointed by man was a false ruler, while only board-appointed directors mattered. Northmore spiraled and became a zealot for the board, obeying their every command. Soon after the upper floors became stabilized, he was ordered to remove all staff from the foundation permanently. Over time, Director Northmore had his bureau uncover more objects of power and began to bind all of the ones he could to give him greater power. Eventually, this became too much and he lost control, becoming a danger to himself and others. When confronted, he eventually agreed to step down and have his enormous power sealed away inside a device known as the Northmore Sarcophagus Chamber, otherwise known as the NSC. While inside, the machine would leach out the excess power his body was producing to keep him from exploding. In doing so, he became a literal battery that powered the oldest house's infrastructure. This information is classified, and most of the staff simply believe the NSC is a fusion reactor. Once in the past, Northmore broke free from containment and went out on a rampage before being secured again in the new NSC-2. This one is still down in the maintenance sector to this day. Northmore is also still alive, powering the building, but he represents a ticking time bomb that will eventually go off. Instrumental to the forced resignation of Northmore was a field agent who was the next in line. Director Zachariah Trench picked up the service weapon and was forced to go through the binding ritual as set out by the board. It is a form of Russian roulette. By placing the gun to his head, the ritual begins. Ultimately, the board did choose to appoint him. However, anyone applying for the job that is rejected will be literally fired on the spot. After witnessing what happened to Northmore, Trench did not trust paranatural forces. He kept his reliance on objects of power to a minimum, and largely tried to handle things without the board's input. His administration saw a radical shift in the FBC's priorities. While Northmore sought to gain personal power from the paranatural, Trench sought to contain these forces, keeping them from causing harm to anyone. He had a few major advancements during his administration. One was the Panopticon down in the containment sector. This housed all contained objects of power and altered items within Blackrock cells. He devoted resources to study how and why they do the things they do, and if they can be controlled. Trench also put into place a building lockdown intended to keep anything that got free from spreading to other sectors or out the front doors into the world as a whole. This lockdown could only be released by directorial override with the use of the service weapon. At some point during his tenure, Director Trench accompanied a ranger team into a new threshold manifested by the slide projector object of power. While there, a viral resonance slipped inside of him and Trojan horsed his way back to the oldest house. From there, with the influence of an alien entity, he degraded into a state of paranoia and insanity over the course of several years. Guided by the voices in his head, he eventually opened the door to a threshold that is the home reality of the Hiss. This is a viral resonance-based entity which can infect a person. Either the individual is turned into a human relay to extend the range of its signal, or it will break the body into various forms for the purpose of killing new victims or breaking off the HRAs so that they can infect more. They act as the main antagonist of the game. If it were not for his head of research, Dr. Casper Darling, the entire FBC would have been wiped off the map. Darling also brought something back from the hand, a giant thing only known as Hedron, which was the megaphone for another alien resonance. As far as we can tell, this one was benign. It guided him through the steps of creating a way to repel the Hiss's frequency with another one. The fruit of their labor is the Hedron resonance amplifiers. All FBC staff wearing one of these was protected from the Hiss invasion. All those who did not were taken over and twisted into monsters hell-bent on incorporating all the survivors into its choir. This event triggered a building lockdown to stop the spread. The reason for what happens next is not truly known. All we know is that at this point, Director Trench held the service weapon to his head and pulled the trigger. Whether he did it willingly due to guilt, his resignation was forced upon him by the board, or he needed to know if he was still worthy to be the director and decided to go through the binding ritual again, and failing this time, the result is the same. Now the oldest house is on lockdown and there is no director to end it. All survivors are trapped inside of a prison with no ability to escape alongside an alien presence hell-bent on global contamination. One legacy of Director Trench's administration ends up being the saving grace for the Bureau, the Prime Candidate Program. The idea was that he wanted to have a backup plan for a change of administration in the worst-case scenario. When Northmore was forced to resign, there was no one waiting in the sidelines to ascend. He didn't want that to happen again. The Prime Candidate Program was designed to seek out potentials to take his job when the time was right. From what we know, there were 7 candidates in total. We only know of 4 of them. First up is Dr. Yoshimi Takui. He became famous when his guided meditations would create visual hallucinations in the subjects who heard his voice. Even data recordings of his words could replicate this effect. While these recordings can be found in the oldest house, there is no information on whether or not he was brought in to be examined. Another potential candidate is not confirmed. However, at one point in time, the author Alan Wake was considered to be a prime candidate worthy of being invested in. Mr. Wake was, at one point, a staff writer on a TV show called Night Springs. An unaired script that he wrote ended up retelling the incident of the hand threshold. Fictional versions of Director Trench and Dr. Darling were characters in his story, and even the alien intelligence from beyond and the red glow were included. His ability to predict or possibly shape reality was of interest. Despite this, we know he was never brought in for further examination since he vanished in Bright Falls in 2010. The next 2 prime candidates were P6 and P7, Dylan and Jesse Faden. They are siblings that were at ground zero for the Altered World event case centered on the town of Ordinary, Maine. This event involved an object of power called the slide projector. Each slide would create a doorway to other dimensions of reality. Some were benign, some held demonic entities, and one was the aforementioned hand where the siblings met with one resonance known as Polaris. This being infected the siblings, but not in the same manner as the Hiss. More of a symbiotic relationship and less of a parasitic one. Instead of taking them over, Polaris became a passenger in their heads. They developed the traits of a para-utilitarian and with her help, was able to stop the hordes of monsters that came from one slide. In the aftermath, the entire adult population of Ordinary had vanished into thin air, leaving only a scattering of children as survivors. FBC staff arrived to investigate and interview the kids. Jessie, however, was not present as she ran away at the sight of the federal agents. Her greatest regret is leaving her brother behind. Dylan was taken in by the Bureau and kept inside the oldest house as a prime candidate. Being a child, they, let's put it delicately, educated him on the ways of the paranatural world. However, his imprisonment eventually turned to madness. They used him to try and track down his sister, promising to bring her in as well. They experimented on him with objects of power to see how far they could push him. The poor boy was fed a healthy diet of a twisted puppet show called the Threshold Kids. Eventually, he began to see the FBC as his captors and the oldest house as his prison. His frustrations resulted in the deaths of various agents before he was placed in a complete lockdown in the Panopticon as a failed experiment and was considered too dangerous to be released. By the time of the Hiss invasion, his cell was breached and he was infected. However, due to the lingering remnants of the Polaris resonance inside, he was not consumed like everyone else. His mind did fracture and he gained the ability to perceive all realities at once, as if they were dreams. While this was all happening, Jessie Faden was on the run from FBC agents while at the same time trying to find her brother they kidnapped. By 2019, Polaris informed her something big was happening in New York and guided her to the front doors of the Oldest House. If it were not for Polaris, the Oldest House would not have been visible to her. Despite being on building lockdown, she found her way in. Once inside, she met the mysterious janitor of the house, Ati. The man has been here a long time, arguably since its construction. When Northmore and Ash Jr. first uncovered the foundation back in the 60s, Ati was already there. Since then, he hasn't aged or deviated from his routine. Per his conversation, he considered the FBC director as his personal assistant. Eventually, she came to the door of Director Trench's office just as the gunshot went off. Finding his dead body, she was guided to picking up the service weapon and went through the ritual to become the new director. From here, her story is the plot of Control, systematically undoing the sector lockdowns, binding objects of power to herself to become strong enough to beat back the Hiss, uncovering the Bureau's secrets, and center to it all, finding her brother and shutting off the slide projector a second time to prevent the waves of Hiss flooding into the house. By the end, the burnt slide threshold was closed and Dylan fell into a coma. However, the Hiss inside were still a problem that needed to be resolved. Until that day, the building lockdown had to be kept intact. Since then, 7 long years have passed before any major developments occur. Remedy games take place in the year they are released, so the events of Control Resonant will take place in 2026. A few things have occurred during that time. The staff have begun to lose hope after being forced to remain inside their workplace with no breaks for 7 years. Talks of an insurgency against Director Faden have been discussed. Their conclusion is essentially a vote of no confidence, as they are no closer to seeing their freedom since she ascended the big chair. In 2022, Director Faden authorized the use of altered items as a combat option for agents to utilize. This undoes the executive actions taken by Director Trench to never rely on such powers and opened the door for all kinds of research to be done, which is dubious on whether it is for the best or not. During this time, more threats outside of the Hiss have either developed or escalated. The furnace in maintenance is getting angrier and burning people who trespass upon its territory. A hostile entity has caused the division and spread of sticky notes that overrides a person's mind when too many stick to the body. After death, they attempt to spread the sticky notes further and infect more people. An invasive leech in the Black Rock threshold has migrated to the quarry and is eating its way through the mineral reserves. Without Black Rock, weaponry, HRAs, and containment cells cannot be manufactured. The byproduct of the leeches eating the mineral is radioactive. If left unattended, the entire quarry will be a radioactive dead zone that no one can access. On top of this, a few altered items have begun to act up. 2 research staff stole and turned on the antenna loop radio in the hopes that they could create a portal out of the Oldest House. Instead, they opened the door to the exogenic mass. This is a semi-conscious and volatile substance that will explode at any mild impact and can take over the minds of those it clings to. The Condor Ascension ski lift demands human sacrifice and is only being fed mannequins, leading to it freezing over an entire area of the Panopticon. Eventually, it could turn the entire house into a freezer, along with anyone inside. Down in the bowels of the research sector, a threshold bearing an invasive mold remains open and is spreading throughout the house. Its aroma is sweet, and imposes an irresistible desire to eat it for those who smell it. Once done, the mold spreads throughout the body, killing the host and animating its body like a puppet with the express purpose of spreading further. At the end of the day, the problems that require routine maintenance are piling up. Our lead janitor, Ati, left on vacation back in 2019, leaving only FBC staff to clean up the mess. The Firebreak Initiative was then formed to respond to these threats. However, it is a losing battle as there is no permanent solution in sight. This brings us up to date with where we are in the story of Control. While this covers maybe 20% of the plot, it gives a good enough foundation to work from for those wishing to get caught up in time for the sequel. We must remember though, the Remedy connected universe is more than just Control. While Remedy has stated Control Resonant can be played without any prior knowledge, knowing the full lore will only enhance your experience for when the game finally comes out next year. I highly recommend playing them for yourself. If anyone would like me to continue this series and cover the bare bones lore of those games as well, let me know in the comments. Regardless, I plan to create a video showing the full play order and all multimedia that is required viewing if anyone wants to have a complete deep dive into this ever-expanding universe. For now though, that is all. I will give you back your day now. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, please drop a like and subscribe to receive updates on future uploads. If you would like to help support the channel, a Patreon has been set up and the link is in the description below. Have a great day and peace be with you all.